Hey, good morning, everybody. So welcome to this session on storytelling. Over the next 20-25 minutes, I'm going to talk a little bit about a subject which is close to my heart, and also as well its relevance in data analytics and data science. Before I go into a few more details, a little bit about myself. So my name's Craig Bloor. I'm senior manager within the enterprise data and analytics team at TD. TD, we're one of Canada's largest financial institutions, serving over 26 million customers across the globe. A little bit of my career, I spent about 16 years in data and analytics across a couple of different industries, telecommunications, fashion retail. Now I've landed in banking, leading teams, both insights and also as experimentation, and also as well most recently data science. Fun fact for the day is when I was 15 in England, I actually starred in a Burger King advert, although I don't seem to be able to find it on YouTube, so I'm not sure what that says. If you like the presentation, want to get in contact, I'm available on my favorite social media platform, which is sorry. Oh, sure. Yeah. I'll go back a little bit. You can find me on my favorite social media platform, which is LinkedIn. Just Google Craig Bloor. Okay. Moving forward, a little bit about today's agenda. So we're going to talk a little bit about the why and the what of storytelling and its pertinence to data science. We're then going to talk a little bit about how to craft better stories, and I'll give you some tips and tricks to help you do that. And then finally, a few tips at the end about how to become visualization is a big part of storytelling, and a few tips that I've picked up reading some different materials about how to become what I call a viz whiz. So moving on, we are all storytellers. Okay, stories are one of the oldest human traditions in existence. We've been telling stories for many years. Stories can motivate us, that we can learn from stories, helps us memorize things. They can also teach us empathy as well about how people understand in certain situations. But they can also as well help frame our perception of the way we look through our lives. And this is very important when you're communicating a particular message to a particular audience. Indeed, some of the best business leaders I've worked with are great storytellers. They're able to frame a message, create an environment through the way they communicate. For those of you interested in Netflix, I recently watched actually the Netflix production on Michael Jordan. And it was really interesting to see how his performance was enhanced through creating stories in his head to improve his performance. He'd make up things such as the competitor wants to beat me, and it was a great way for him to excel. And again, some of the best leaders are great storytellers. But the great news is, well, like anything in life, storytelling is a skill, but it can be. We are all very capable of doing it, but it also can be improved as well. And I'll give you a few tips and tricks on how to do that. Stories can be told in essentially many different ways, and there's no right or wrong way to do it, but the method often suits the needs. So it might be we're communicating via email, we're communicating via presentation, we're communicating informally at the coffee machine. Lots of different methods, no right or wrong answer, but the way you can frame a story is often the key to its successful delivery. A little bit about why data storytelling is so important in data science, which is something that I've picked up on leading teams in the past. Data science is essentially both a science and it's the art of persuasion as well. When we think about the skills of our data analytics and data science professionals, there's a range of different things that we look for, and it's a highly skilled job. When we focus on the data analytics skills, more of the technical skills, we're looking for competences in machine learning, statistics, also comfort with handling different technologies in order to manipulate and cleanse data, and of course analysis as well. There's lots of different courses. We see a lot of graduates at TD, they come through really strong at the technical side of things. There's often, though, a fourth skill which is actually omitted from when we look at the skill of data scientist, and that is the ability to communicate, tell a story, summarize the work the great work that they've been able to do. And the reason storytelling and communication is so important from a data science perspective is that being good at storytelling and communication allows what we're called purpose-driven analytics. Purpose-driven analytics is essentially analytics, actionable analytics. So we spend a lot of time working on developing our techniques and our best models. But if we can't actually communicate our findings to our business partners in order for them to take decisive action on what we've done, it actually often renders all the great work that we've done previously in the development phase, identifying the business problem. So how can then we tell better stories? So I'm going to talk now about a couple of frameworks which you can potentially use when you're crafting your message. And first of all is preparing a good story. So summarizing your work. Essentially, there's three key steps. Now, the first one is understanding the context in which you currently reside in, and you could think about this as what is the business problem that you're trying to solve for. The next one is then how do we define a narrative? So how do we structure the message that we want to get through to our audience? And it could be we've developed this new material. We want to actually we've developed a new model. We want to convince our executive that it's actually the right way to go and implement this model. And then the third one is around the delivery of the message, and this is where the aspects of visualization it can be very important. First of all, then, looking about understanding a narrative. Now, the key to this is audience. It's all about knowing your audience that you're and let's say we're going to do a presentation, for example. Okay, so who is the audience? Is it an executive who's often got a very short attention span? They're in meetings back to back all day, specifically during the pandemic in this virtual world. They just want to know the main facts about what you're trying to do. Or is it a fellow data scientists in the data science team? They want to know more about the details, about the business problem, the approach you took, the way your coding, the way you structured it. Again, very different audience. You've got more time. You may have an hour and a half, as opposed to just a 10-minute window. Secondly, and this is an important one, which I've often found is useful, is who, in terms of your audience, are they data fluent? Are they used to making decisions based on data? TD is a huge organization. We have some areas of the enterprise which have the leaders and the business partners are very comfortable in using data to make decisions. There are other areas, like any large enterprise, where data and analytics is still a growing capability, and they're not used to making decisions with data. They need a lot of explanation and coaching. And again, something they need to think about is when you're going to communicate to your audience, what is their level of data fluency? The next point is around what knowledge do you want your audience to gain from it? Do you want to say this model is going to reduce customer churn by X? This analysis is pointing out key drivers of customer satisfaction. Think about what are those key takeaways that you want your audience to gain from your communication, whether it be a presentation, whether it be an email, whether it be some sort of document. And one of the most important things is, what do you want your audience to feel? Okay, do you want to make them feel happy? Do you want to shock them into taking action? Are you looking for investment in a particular new analytics tool? How do you want to, and you can, when you're drafting your communication, you can take them on what I call a roller coaster of emotions. You can go down and then you can bring it up, lots of different ways. But really, what do you want them to know? What do you want them to make you feel? And if you can create an emotional connection with the way in which you picture information, that is often the key to them remembering what you've just delivered. And then finally, what is the desired outcome at the end? So do you want your, is it an executive? You're looking for buy-in to implement a new model, for example. Is it you're looking for more investment? Are you looking for to convince somebody that the current risk policy is not working and we need to change it, or we need to remove? What are those 2 or 3 desired outcomes that you want the audience to take away from hearing about what you've purpose driven, as I mentioned earlier. So the next thing is about how do we define our narrative? And believe it or not, if you were to study all the best communicators, there's often structure to the way they do things. There's a couple of frameworks that we teach. I've taught in the past to help students and even mature professionals deliver better stories. Now, the first one is what we call the storytelling pyramid. Now, this is based on a book by Barbara Minto. I refer to it at the end of the session. It's a fantastic book, and it's a simple way of structure. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. I'm working from home at the moment. So talk a little bit again about the storytelling pyramid. So it's a method based on Barbara Minto. It's a great way to structure a message. It's actually used by journalists, and I'll give you an example about how we use that in a minute. Another framework that we can use is something which has been developed within the consultancy world, which is the situation, complication, and resolution, the SCR. Pretty simple framework, and again, I'll talk you through an example about how you could use that to structure a communication in a minute. Okay, first one is the pyramid approach. So the pyramid approach, it essentially helps us organize our message with a key takeaway at the top, supported by the main arguments at the bottom. So, and I give you an example here right now. So the key takeaway here is that dogs are much smarter than cats, according to an international team of researchers. Great. Why is that, Craig? Well, the main argument based on the fact that dogs are arguing that dogs are more sophisticated, are more intelligent than cats is based on the number of what we call cortical neurons. So according to this study, dogs have probably double the So that's the argument supporting the cats. Let's go down again into a more granular level. Well, cortical neuron. Well, based on this scientific paper, it's to do with our biological abilities. So again, high level, we start with our high level. What's the message we want to take away from it? Below it, what is those key messages that support our argument? Give you an example. We have a new model that's going to increase customer retention by 5%. Okay, why are we going to do that? We could then go through the performance of the model and the differences and the analysis that we've led us to that conclusion in the preceding slides. The second one, as I talked about earlier, is the SCR approach. So situation, complication, resolution. Situation. What is the situation that we find ourselves in right now? What is the business problem that we're trying to solve for? The complication. Okay, well, what is it about the situation that we need to come to some sort of resolution on? We can describe that, and then resolution essentially is what we're going to do about it. Okay, and you can essentially play with these 3 circles if you think about it. So you could start with a situation. This is a traditional flow, but you could actually put the resolution at the start. And again, I'll talk about that in a minute, why that's important. So let's give a quick high-level example. So the situation is fraud transactions are currently up year on year. That's not good, specifically in the financial world. Specifically, if we've got a state, if our customer base is not growing. As well, we actually introduced a new product offering last year. Okay, so maybe we're bringing on new customers that we haven't actually seen before. The resolution is, well, look, we've developed, the data science team developed a new machine learning model, and we estimate that we can capture over 60 million in additional fraud, which has been created by this new product. So we've set out the situation, we've set out details about the situation and the complication, and this is what we're going to do. Now, this is a very logical flow, which the scientific mind often aligns with. So I'll give you an example. What's the business problem, the situation? What's the hypothesis? Okay, what's the research we've done to fix the situation or the hypothesis or proves or disproves. What's the resolution? Very traditional approach, works in a lot of where data fluency. If though, for example, and I talk about, I always go back to you presenting to your executive audience at the end. Okay, what's the resolution? Well, the resolution is we've developed a new machine learning model which can capture $60 million in fraudulent activity. Wow. Okay. Why have you developed that? Well, the situation is fraudulent transactions are up, and here's the complication around the details about how we did it. So again, very flexible, can be used in different ways depending on who your audience is. So we've talked a little bit about the importance of audience standing, talked about two simple frameworks which can help you structure. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the delivery of the message. The pyramid principle is essentially can be applied. Now, love it or hate it, I've worked in a lot of different large organizations across lots of different sectors. Not in all organizations, but in the majority of organizations, it's still one of the main methods of communication. And all our data scientists at TD will at some point have to deliver PowerPoint presentations to our business audiences. And we can apply the pyramid principle essentially to help. And here's an example. Now, this is a famous example from McKinsey, a case study, and you can find references to it on the internet. Now, this slide has been credited with actually changing the US Postal Service's business strategy. McKinsey were brought in to look at what they were doing and how they could improve it. And if you think about it from the pyramid principle perspective, so what's the key takeaway? Well, the key takeaway at the top is that the US Postal Service is experiencing unprecedented losses. What are the main arguments for that? Well, revenue is down, okay, due to a number of different reasons. Okay, so revenue is down, so we essentially do about it? Well, if revenue's down, call to action is we need to fix our strategy. Another way of, so literally talk a little bit about visualization. So I'm now going to talk about a few visualization tips, and these are comes from a practitioner called Cole Borma, an ex-Google practitioner. A fantastic book, again, I recommend it at the end, but she's come up with a book about how to improve your visualization capabilities. We talk about visualization. Okay, thank you. We talk about visualization being an important way to tell better stories. Well, a couple of tips here. We could spend a whole day on improving visualization, but these are some of the 2 or 3 main tips that I've took actually from my time reading and also experience. The first one is thinking is slow, seeing is fast. And let's talk about it. Let's give a quick example right now. So data tables, they look great in documents, but they do not look good in presentations. Okay, you have to think. What does this? A lot of it, but there's no information. Doesn't tell me about what's going already on right now about it. Not the right way to go. Okay, maybe a slightly better way is to actually take the next way is to how do we visualize. So let's take this data and put some sort of visualization around it. Well, okay, we visualize the concept. We put a bar chart in place. Okay, we can start to see some, definitely, we've used one color, fine. It's better, okay? I can actually see that between the years 2010 and 2016, overall, the trend was that sales are up. We were dipping again, going down a little bit, okay? So that's a bit better, okay? We'll like that one. However, there is a better way. So we've got the concept of visualization, but how can we tweak the visualization to help our brains understand it even quicker? Well, the use of a line chart, okay? Clearly here you can see that between 2010 and 2016, the trend clearly up. We don't even have to think about it. Obviously, there was a dip towards the later years before stabling off again. So key takeaway here is when an audience has to think about your visualization, forget it. If they get it straight away, that's one of the key tips for successful visualization. The next one, and this really is one of my favorites. So if you look at this pie chart, and I often ask, when we're giving training internally in T, I often ask people which survey, and I say which supplier is actually bigger. Is it A, B, C, or D? Yeah, 5 seconds to think about it. Again, seeing is fast. Yeah, the often tendency is most people actually say that supplier D is actually got the largest market share. Well, because of the way the chart is positioned, the colors, the way it's presented to the human eye, again, we talk about seeing is fast. You kind of conditionally think that the supplier D is actually bigger. Well, actually, it's not. It's the one at the end. Again, a lesson in depth perception. So what's a better way of visualizing this? Well, we could use differently when we're looking at percentages, market share. The horizontal bar chart is often a very nice something. Again, it's pretty clear. You can see it, you can get what's happening. So as the biggest takeaway from that is that pie charts are evil. Okay, very pronounced statement there. Okay, finally, a little bit more around sort of visualization tips. So when you produce a visualization, ask yourself a couple of key questions. The first one is, what do I want my audience? We talked about it earlier from this visualization as with a presentation. And the second one is, if I were just to put this visualization in front of someone who's never seen, who has no clue about what I've been doing, my work, can it be understood on its own if no one was presenting or giving any context? Two key questions always ask yourself. So in wrapping up then, a couple of tips. So when doing visualizations, the first one is people often think data labels are your enemy. They're not. They can actually, but you do it in an intelligent way, it can actually reduce the number of questions, significantly reduce the number of questions about your visualization. The second one is, if you have time, test your. I just talked about, can a visualization be understood on its own? Test it out on someone who's not actually working on your project with you right now. And then finally, great piece of advice I've always been told: try and keep it as simple as possible. And one of the challenges working in data science is often, how do we take a complex and actually translate it into a simple message? And again, that's a skill, and it takes time to practice. So just wrapping up, I do a lot of reading, a lot of great material on YouTube. If you're interested in visualization or storytelling, strongly encouraged to consult these three materials. I talked about The Pyramid Principle by Barbara Minto. Great book goes into more detail about the pyramid. The book Pie Charts Are Evil, credit that to Cole. The book on Let's Practice. There's a website as well with the same title of the book. Really interesting book, lots of different practice as well. And then also another good book as well I've dabbled with in the past is Dashboards by Steve Wixler. So that can, as he's saying, that's a wrap. Concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.